I am Dr. Ray Dykes, and this is the Personal Faith Program. This podcast is entitled Putting Together How the Bible Was Put Together. The Bible, the word Bible comes from a Greek word biblia, which is a plural, which means books. And it comes from the word biblos, which was a Phoenician city where papyrus was made. So it can also mean papyrus, and of course that's the original paper on which the Bible came to be written. The manuscript material was called after the place of its manufacture, and that is Biblos. Now we're going to talk about the word canon, C-A-N-O-N, canon. That means a list of books. And so we have three different canons of the Bible in Christianity. In chronological order, we have the Catholic canon, we have the Orthodox canon, and we have the Protestant canon. And they are different in the Old Testament only. The New Testament canon is the same for all three. But there are, in the Catholic canon, there are 73 books in the Catholic canon. There are 77 books in the Orthodox canon, and 66 books in the Protestant canon. The word canon goes back to a Semitic word which means a reed, and that's what they use for measuring. So a canon has to do with these measuring of these books. Certain books were accepted as and approved, and some were not. And they were the ones that were approved were understood to be authoritative for life and faith. Now, the canon of the Hebrew Bible, or the Old Testament, is the Hebrew Bible is called the Tanakh, T-N-K, but you put A's in there, T-A-N-A-K, Tanakh. And the various books in the Hebrew Bible were written over a period of 1,000 years. And the formation of the canon of the Old Testament Hebrew Bible came about in three main phases. First of all, the Torah. The Greek word is Pentateuch, the first 5 books in the Torah. And it means, really, it's not law. It means instruction or guidance as to how to live life as God would have you live it. And the Torah, these first 5 books, were probably recognized as canonical, meaning accepted, as authoritative for life and faith of believers in its present form, in about 400 BCE, before the Common Era, same as BC, 400 BCE. Now, the next section, that was the T in Tanakh, is Torah. The N is Nevi'im. Nevi'im means prophets. And you had what is called in the Hebrew Bible the former prophets, and it's basically history books. Those are Joshua, Judges, 1st and 2nd Samuel, and 1st and 2nd Kings. And they're really not prophecy so much as they are history. They're called prophets because they were interpreted in light of the latter prophetic understanding of covenant demands of the Hebrew people, and in light of the Torah. And so, but they're history books. And then the latter prophets in the Nevi'im, in the prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and the book of the 12 prophets, the ones Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. That book of the 12. And these books contain multiple collections of oracles and other narratives. But remember that, and most of this is written in poetry, remember that prophecy in terms of future telling is explicitly forbidden in Hebrew thought and in the Torah. It is explicitly forbidden future telling. So what these prophets are doing is they are saying, here's what's going to happen based on what you are doing presently. It's common sense kinds of things, not some exotic fortune telling, future telling kind of thing. So the Nevi'im as we have them in the approximate present form, were considered canonical, were accepted as a part of the Hebrew Bible in about 200 BCE. Now, the last part, the K in T-N-K, the K in Tanakh is Ketuvim, stands for Ketuvim, the word which means writings. And this group includes Psalms, Proverbs, Job, Song of Solomon, Ruth, Lamentations, Ecclesiastes, Esther, Daniel, Ezra, Nehemiah, and 1st and 2nd Chronicles. And so these were the last group to be considered authoritative for life and faith. And they were not in the Hebrew Bible at the time when Jesus' Bible, the Bible Jesus had was the Torah and the Nevi'im. Paul had the Torah and the Nevi'im, but his was in Greek. Jesus was in Hebrew, and so that's different. The Ketuvim were not considered authoritative until the Council of Jamnia in 97 CE, the Common Era. In other words, after Jesus and Paul had lived and died. And the rabbis who were in Jerusalem, when Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 CE, they moved to the coast of the Mediterranean. And they debated these books. And so they eventually reached a decision that these books would be included also. Even though they were not an officially appointed group, they were the only ones with any kind of authority whatsoever in Judaism. So there was a lot of debate about these books. Ecclesiastes, for example, was debated because it's very unorthodox. The Song of Solomon, or also called the Song of Songs, was debated because it's pretty explicit sexually. But it was included because they interpret it as this symbolic of God's love for Israel. Esther was debated because there's no mention in Esther of the name of God. Ezekiel, really weird book, was debated because it disagreed with some legal sections of the Torah. So anyway, these books finally were adopted and put into the canon of the Old Testament, or the Tanakh. Now, in addition, then in the Catholic Church, they added an additional group of books that are called deuterocanonical, second canon. They added these to the Old Testament. They apparently have a lot to do with the period between 200 BCE and 100 CE. A lot to do with that period of time in between the Old Testament and the New Testament. And so that's the piece that was added by the Catholics to the Old Testament. Now, and then at the time of in the Eastern Church, in the Orthodox Church, they added 4 more. 7 more added by the Catholics, 4 more added by the Orthodox churches. And again, it was in that same time period from about 200 BCE to 100 CE. Let's talk about the canon of the New Testament now. Again, the canon of the New Testament is the same in all three Bibles, in the Catholic Bible, in the Orthodox Bible, and in the Protestant Bible. And the books of the New Testament were written within a period of about 100 years. The first book written was in 51, Paul's letter to Thessalonica, and the last is usually considered to be 2 Peter, written at about 130. So from 51 to 130 is the period of time that the books of the New Testament, the 27 books of the New Testament, were written. Why did they Why did they write these down? Well, you had the thought in the early Christian church that the earliest generation of followers were dying out, and so people needed to have these memories in written form. At first, it was in oral form, some of it, and you also had these churches. We have the four Gospels that we have in the New Testament canon, Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John, were written by written in the four churches that were most powerful in the first century. We have Rome, Alexandria, Egypt, Antioch of Syria, and Ephesus in Turkey, Asia Minor. And they were written there as orientation manuals for new converts and to help make new converts. These were orientation manuals, these Gospels. We know of 43 Gospels that were written. We don't have 43 Gospels, but we have references to these other Gospels. We have some intact of the other Gospels. The Gospel of Thomas we have entirely. Other Gospels that we have parts of. The Gospel of Judas, the Gospel of Mary, the Gospel of Peter. We have these various pieces of these Gospels. But these four were the ones that made the canon. Because of the importance of these four churches in the early church. But of course, Paul's writings were the first writings that we have in the New Testament chronologically. Paul writes from 51 to 58, and he wrote these letters, and Paul was executed in Rome around 64 CE. So congregations preserved Paul's letters, and they were collected in a group and preserved as a collection. By the end of the first century CE, they were probably in some sort of collection that was being circulated. So Paul's letters, and then after that, after Paul, the four Gospels were written, and so you have books like Acts and 1 John and 1 Peter, but some other books that were written, like the book of Revelation, was highly debated and was not readily accepted. Hebrews is another one. No one still to this day knows who wrote Hebrews. 2nd and 3rd John, 2nd Peter, the last one written. There were other writings that were written, and some people wanted to include them in this New Testament canon. Like the Shepherd of Hermas and 1 Clement and Epistle of Barnabas. Some congregations accepted those, but in the end, they didn't make the cut. Now, you had several people who tried to establish the list for themselves. Marcion, who wrote about the middle of the 2nd century CE. Interesting guy, but he put out his list. And it included an edited version of the gospel dedicated to Luke, and then he put Paul's letters in there, but he edited them also. He threw out the Tanakh, or the Old Testament, altogether, and that was his list, but it didn't go very far. You had a guy named Tatian who did a uni-gospel. He took those Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John and combined them into one gospel, and that got popular for a while but didn't last. But the one who really put together the list, the canon of the New Testament, was Athanasius, who was a bishop of Alexandria, Egypt. And in his annual Easter letter, his festal letter to the churches of his diocese in 367, he put these listed 27 books. And he's the first person we know of that made the list and used the word canon. This is a canon of the New Testament. And so he presented his list, and of course, being the Bishop of Alexandria, Egypt, he put Matthew at the beginning of the list, because Matthew had been written in Alexandria, Egypt. He knew that Mark was written before, so he didn't put them in chronological order. He put them in what he considered importance, and he thought Matthew was the most important. So anyway, later on, the councils and synods approved this list that Athanasius had put forward, and eventually the Pope declared that these were the books, and that was in 405. But controversy continued, and so when we get to the Reformation, then the Protestant reformers threw out the Deuterocanon, the books that the Catholics and the Orthodox had added. They threw that out and said, we're going back to the Hebrew Bible. That's going to be our Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible. So the canonical process, you have to understand that neither the Old Testament nor the New Testament, the books, the canons of those Old and New Testament, they were not established by some authority. They established themselves over time in people's minds. Even though Athanasius may have given a ruling on a few doubtful cases relating to specific books, primarily he simply endorsed the books that everyone already accepted as meaningful and authoritative for their own faith. And so that's the canon. And that's how the Bible came to be put together. If you would like to support this ministry of the Personal Faith Program, you can do so by going to our website, personalpastor.org, and it has addresses and phone numbers and where you can make contributions, tax-deductible contributions to the Personal Faith Program. Thank you for watching this, and I'll see you next time.